Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Night Live, your favorite automotive show where we tackle the issues that affect the customer experience at your stores. Whether it's the front of the store, the back of the store, or the middle, doesn't really matter because the better experience they have, they'll come back to you for everything they need when they need it. And I'm very fortunate. I have a great group of friends, connections, and colleagues that come on here every week or almost every week and share with us what they've done or what they're doing now to improve that experience at your stores. Real actionable items that you can use starting tomorrow. Never any fluff or BS, just real information. And if you guys are not connected with either Joe or myself, feel free, if there makes sense to connect, by all means, we'd love to connect with you. So welcome to the show, Joe.
Hey, thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me. I'm excited about tonight's chat. I think we've got a lot to offer today.
I think so, man. And it started with your post. You did a post about, not feeling like you're worthy to be in a particular room or something to that effect. Mm-hmm. And that really hit home because I think a lot of us feel that way. And it doesn't seem to matter how many years we're in the business, right? I'm decades in, you're decades in. But there were times that I thought, well, maybe I don't really have that skill set. And my wife would just club me over the head. And she said, no, come on. You have all that and more. You've been doing this for many, many years. And I finally started listening to her. So when your post hit, I'm like, oh, man, that's why I immediately picked up the phone and reached out to you because I know there are other people that go through this and some of the other topics that we have for tonight. So I'm very excited. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I think to your point, there's so many of us that think, you have to be in a bigger room. You have to have a bigger audience. You have to have a wider reach or be famous to actually be able to have a content or value add for other people. And I just finally realized that's not true. You have a lot to offer. And in many cases, most leaders have a lot to offer other people, which it just takes courage and it takes a little bit of consistency to get your theme and your message and your theories out there. But I want to just pivot, if I might, just for a second. Tonight is not about theory in a vacuum. It's about maybe pulling back the curtain a little bit on what leadership looks like when pressure hits. And if you're showing up here looking for a quick fix or maybe recycled talking points, this isn't going to be that conversation. But if the people that have joined us they're here to figure out what works, what real leadership looks like when it's honest, when it's tested, when it's human, then this is the right place. No hype, no hacks, just a one-on-one conversation about what today's leaders need most. I think it's courage. I think it's clarity and it's congruence. So let's get into it, brother.
All right. Beautiful. Let me just acknowledge a couple of comments here. Starting us off, Jamie Alexander says, hello all. Hope everything's good with you, Jamie. See, there were some changes recently. If there's anything I could do to help, by all means, feel free to reach out. You have my cell phone number. Russell B. Hill joins us. Hello, everyone. Cannot wait to hear the mic drops from Coach. And Mike Vogel on the phone, on the platform, LinkedIn user. See, not my first rodeo. Mike says, should be some great info shared tonight from my Fixed Ops Brothers LinkedIn user equals Mike Vogel. Fixed Ops. Oh, he put that in there too.
He did. I see that. Thanks, Coach.
Clearly not his first rodeo either. And we have Frank Knox, my inventory acquisition buddy, who I'm going to be seeing in I think about 2 or 3 weeks. We are going to chow down. I told him to start dieting now because it's not going to end well for him. I'm just saying. John Frazier says, hey guys, and Russell B. Hill, let's go rock and roll. Kyle Morissette, love listening and learning from Coach. Dave Rozek, my AI buddy. Lots of leaders here. And Wayne Bridges, this is going to be fun and informational. All right, so we're going to get into the topic a little bit. Hopefully we don't fall too far behind on comments. So the first thing that we want to talk about is why do so many leaders fake it? And there's good and there's bad, right? So Joe, kick us off with this one, man.
So I wanted to approach this maybe a little bit differently because I think most leaders, they don't posture to deceive people in general, right? They generally posture to protect themselves from scrutiny, from exposure, from failure. That's the biggest fear is what if I put myself out there and I fail? But the irony is that the armor that you put on makes you less effective, not more effective, right?
Okay.
And I think when you look at psychological safety, it's not just for teams, it's for leaders too. And when you are in a system that punishes you for being honest, punishes you for maybe not having as eloquent a message as perhaps some of the, masterminds, right, if you will. We train leaders to just perform instead of really contribute. And that's what we talk about a lot is how do you contribute, not just perform, not get on a stage and act, but really give content that makes a difference for people. We talked about the imposter syndrome, right? It's not
Yeah.
a mindset issue so much as it is a systemic byproduct. And this is what happens in that environment. So I did that post and really it was about just being genuinely human and saying, I didn't think I was good enough to be able to add value to other people. And sometimes it just takes a little courage and put yourself out there. And there's so many people on here that I see all the time. John Fraser, Russell, Jamie, and even David and Wayne, and people that put their content out there that adds value, that
Yeah.
they've been through this framework before. And they put content out there that's free for you to absorb. For anyone who cares to see value, dives right in. It's just fantastic. And it's a great mindset for leaders to be in. Don't fake it, just be authentically yourself, right?
People fake it till they make it, and it gives them a certain confidence to kind of bridge that gap, right? It takes them beyond their comfort zone, but it can backfire also because sometimes it just goes to the nth extreme where people just put out fraudulent stuff, right? I had a situation recently where somebody was dropping names, like they were given candy at a parade. And what that person didn't know is that the person they were dropping the names to knew some of those people. And when the phone rang and the person answered, "Hey, do you know this person?" It was a resounding no, never heard of them. And no, we've never done any business. So, the fake it till you make it stuff, I get it. And it can help to some degree, but I think people have taken it way beyond where it needs to be these days.
Yeah, when you apply things to use technology, maybe ChatGPT or some other function to replace real meaningful content, real meaningful experience, real meaningful perspective, that changes because that fake it to the make it, you can do that as long as you are learning from it and you're giving value as a result. If you're doing it to mask who you might be or what that lack of experience might be, to your point, that's the more negative approach. Anyone can be an expert today with enough research, right? But
Right.
very few can use that expertise because of experience. Experience teaches you so much more. And for you and I, one of the things we've experienced is a great deal of failure, right? That is
Every
real.
day.
And every day, right? And so then you could take those skill sets and you have the opportunity to say, hey, this is what I've learned. As a result, this is what might add value. So anytime you're giving that value to someone else because you genuinely care, that's genuine approach. That authenticity is what comes through. And I that's who I am. So that's, I hope really my message really comes across that way. It's authentic. It's genuine. I'm going to make flubs. I'm going to make mistakes, but it's all out of care and all of experience.
And I guess the thing too is never be afraid to say you don't know, right? There's nothing wrong with that. My father taught me, he said, you don't need to know everything. He said, you just need to know a little bit about a lot of things. And if you know that, you can get into conversations with people about anything and learn from those people. I'm so lucky, guys like you and Mike Vogel and many of the other people on here that I learn from on a regular basis, right? I'm not afraid to say when I don't know something,
Well,
So
any real leader, any leader who has substance says, I don't know. Let me find out. That's a great question. Let me do more research. When you're authentic enough to say, I don't really have that answer, but I think together we use your genius and we help solve a problem, then it becomes a we. And then the person, the individual is more empowered to come up with a solution. You don't have to know it all as a leader. You don't. You just have to be genuine and authentic enough, have the vision, have the value, have the purpose and the mission aligned. The rest is not easy, but it's so much more valuable of a journey when you're authentic and you can say, hey, you know what? I don't know that. And I say that enough, right? I don't know. So that's key. You don't have to be that expert.
One of the things I love is when I'm working in a store, okay, I work with them to have them come up with the answer, right? By me not being the guy that knows it all, because I don't, but I know which questions to ask to uncover what it is that they're trying to achieve, right?
Yes.
That's really the secret sauce. And there's no greater feeling than an aha moment when they come up with that answer. Right? They think you walk on water, right, Joe? But you really help them through self-discovery.
Yeah, self-discovery is the key. That Socratic method of asking the right questions I always call it the mental file cabinet. We can get into that later, but the idea is to position the person to be able to access that file of information anytime they want by empowering them. And so when you're a leader and you tell someone what to do, cognitively, they'll do it, but they can't recall it. And so that Socratic method that you're talking about is really vital as a leader. And I've learned the way that you lead the best is ask the best questions.
Yeah,
because you genuinely empower others to have the answer, to come up with a solution. And then you don't have to have all the answers. Right? You just have to have all the questions.
They get more value from that. Let me get to a couple of comments. Mike Vogel says leaders need to build team membership relationships first if they expect them to deliver the same to their customers. Joe, authentic is so accurate, 1000%. And Frank Knox, very hard to be a true leader if you haven't been there and walked in those shoes. Military generals don't land in that seat without being battle tested. You can have a guy come out of Naval Academy, okay, and latest, greatest everything. But when it comes right down to it, if I'm in a storm and I don't know if we're going to make it to land, I want that old salty sea dog that's been doing it for 100 years that knows he may not know the instrumentation, but he knows the ocean, he knows the ship, and he knows what he or she needs to do to get you through to the other side. And I had shoulder surgery done, which did not go well. I went with a new doctor and I thought, hey, guy's just out of school. He's the latest, greatest. Not so much, but we all make mistakes and admitting them is probably the best thing. And Jamie Alexander says, amen, authenticity and vulnerable.
Yeah.
Showing that you're weak in spots? No way.
Brene Brown talks about vulnerability and leadership in a more authentic way than anyone I've ever read or heard or seen. And her philosophy is really simple. Vulnerability doesn't make you weak. It makes you stronger. It makes you more connected. And that vulnerability is a strength of a leader, so long as it's used to add value and perspective to the team, as long as it's used to leverage growth and not leverage or create this divisiveness within a team. So vulnerability it's scientifically proven. And Brene Brown is a great example of if you haven't read her books, you really should. She's amazing.
Maybe put that in the thread, because I bet you there are probably people that have not heard. And Wayne Bridges says some natural leaders forget that they need training in different communication. Oh, Wayne, you know, this is my thing, man. In different communication and learning styles to be effective and understanding.
Gosh.
I love this guy.
I could go on for hours, and Russ is probably chuckling in his seat, and so is Coach going, hey, wait a minute, Joe's going to grab out of that. Yeah, I am, because I think one of the biggest gaps we have is that we don't invest in people. We don't invest in ourselves. We don't give the time to say we need to learn different things. I've mentioned this before. There are 4 generations of people in the workforce today. First time in history. We have neurodivergent people working in the workforce today. Are leaders taught today how to manage a person that has ADD? No, they're not. No. They're taught how to write a repair order, how to close it properly, how to collect your money, how to maximize bottom line profitability. All those things are important.
Sure.
But it's more important to invest in the people, and we could go on about this for hours, but to invest in people and your own skills, keep leveraging up. Leaders are learners, first and foremost, learners that are lifelong learners.
That's why they both start with L, not coincidence. Mike Larkin, question I asked another show, when was the last time ChatGPT smiled at you?
I imagine you could probably ask it to, right?
It's not good at graphics. No, it's not good at graphics. It sucks at graphics, actually.
It's a great point. Yeah, I think that's the vulnerability. Yeah.
Jamie Alexander, I don't know, but together we can find out. Yep.
Yes.
Frank Knox puts up the hands emojis, and Kyle says, you don't know what you don't know. It's okay to admit that. Love it.
Yeah.
Hey, let's talk about burnout. Is there such a thing, or is it just misalignment?
I love this topic. You know what most leaders are taught? Set a goal, rally the team, push harder and harder to hit a number, and do it all over again.
0 to hero. Back to 0.
It drives results, right? But over time, it breaks people. The team gets tired, not from the work. They don't get tired from doing the work, but from constantly chasing something that just never lets up. And so if you think about it, we build cultures that treat every milestone like it's a finish line. And every second we cross it, there's another one waiting. No pause, no breath. It's a cycle of push, crash, repeat. We're building performance. Are we? No. We're not building performance. We're really draining that performance. So we're trying to say we're building resistance and resilience, but we're not. We're building that level of resilience because people have to work through it. They call it, I did a post about this not too long ago. It's called goalpost syndrome, and it's something real in science. It says that essentially when clarity or peace never shows up, right, and it's going for the next big push, it doesn't last. That's why there's so many dips and such high turnover and energy drops and focus disappears. And then what happens? Motivation tanks. And then we wonder why people are disengaged. Well, great leaders don't chase done. They build systems that move without burning people out. It's not about going faster, Paul. It's about creating something that can hold up when the pressure's on. That's real leadership. No sprints, a rhythm, a flow to it, a cadence of that energy. So I think for many leaders, you got to ask, what are you building? What kind of system? Are you building something that is rhythmic, or are you just building a push and close, push and close? And sometimes I think, especially true in the automotive industry, we're on that goalpost syndrome where everyone is pushing for a milestone and then everything, there's no exhale. It's just the energy drops. So if you can get rhythmic about it, if you can really work towards that systematic approach with energy, with team, with high level values, you'll start building a culture. And culture is the silent thing that drives all of this. And you'll be able to tell whether or not your culture is congruent with that. So I think for many, just to bring this full circle, that gap between burnout and really leveling up the team is a process of being in rhythm, communication, collaboration, teamwork. All those buzzwords are great, but you have to have a rhythm to your process. You have to have a rhythm to everyone being engaged in this. I always say that the EQ skills, the soft skills we talk about, they have to be hardwired. So they're not soft skills, they're hardwired skills. They're the skills that the leader needs to be able to take that next hill, to be able to climb the next mountain. Because on the other side, there's the next level of growth. Great leaders bring it out of people. And then it's fun, it's rhythmic, it's part of the ebbs and flows. It's not I climb a peak and then I crash because all the energy's gone.
You know what the sad part is, though? In decades, and I'm sure you've seen it, the norm is the rush, rush, rush. The zero to hero, back to zero, to hero, back to zero. It's the push, push, push without the development of that rhythm. That's the reality of what's out there.
Well, when you recalibrate the team, when you actually get rhythmic and you are on a point where you actually get the team in a rhythm of work, then it's less drive and crash. It's more about a goal-oriented focus that is jointly achieved, that everyone's climbing and striding together. You've been in those environments, right? I'm sure many of you have, where everything seems to be fun, it's exciting, it's a joy to climb that next mountain. And then there's the other environment where you are just mentally drained, and it's the leader's responsibility. If you want to identify your culture, you got to identify the leader, because the leader sets the culture, and the culture is what drives the business. Whether you like it or not, whether you realize it or not, or whether you want to admit it or not, culture is driving everything.
It's Jamie says, approach and teach by personality, learn their way of learning and teach based on that person before pushing a sterile process. I like that. Wayne Bridges, he says, I like that. Leaders are lifelong learners. That's true. The minute you think that you've arrived, that's when it's time to get off the train.
Yeah.
Because that's when you stop growing. That's when you stop learning. You and I, we're in this decades. I know I learn every day. I learn something from someone. And I put that in my life toolbox, and I look to share that with the next person that comes in front of me, because I can relate an experience, to engage them.
I shared this story before, Paul. I will often listen to a podcast on something I may not agree with at all. And the reason I'll do that is because I want perspective. I don't have to change where my stances or my values or beliefs are, but I need to understand the other person's perspective. So oftentimes I'll watch or listen to something I don't agree with. Right. And I still don't agree with them when I leave, but I have perspective. And I think that's part of lifelong learning. Every day, not only, and I'll share this practice with anyone who cares to actually deploy it, is write something every single day, literally read something every day, or watch or listen to something every day, because those insights, it's like building your mental file cabinet. You're getting more and more files that are created for you to access at some point in your life, because you're getting all this new input, right? So books are like this theoretical ChatGPT download. The more you read, the more perspective and value you get. So hopefully that adds value to the people that are on today.
Yeah, no, that's a great thing. Uh, David says you weren't born to drown in deadlines. You were built to disrupt, to dominate, to define your rhythm. Love it.
I love that. Well said.
Jamie Alexander, such truth. If we have to talk about culture, we have none. Culture isn't written, but intention and action. It's like the person that says, "Oh, I'm the boss." You know what? You don't have to say you're the boss. People know by your actions and your what you do and how you carry yourself whether or not you're the boss, right? I ran repair shops for a corporation. Okay. People come in and they thought I owned the store. They thought it was my store. No, it wasn't my store. I ran it like it was my store, but I didn't own the store. So to Jamie's point, that's spot on. And Frank Knox says it comes down to, are you vision driven or KPI driven? Man, get the hammer out right now.
Yeah, absolutely. The more you focus just on the KPI, the more you tell your team the only thing that matters is the result. When in fact, the result is the byproduct of focusing on all the right efforts.
There you go.
It's about aligning the team with this rhythm about what your values are, what your mission is, what your purpose is. And when people understand that, they are much more aligned. And listen, if you're hiring people, you should hire in accordance to your culture. That's hard to do. You know why? Because we always want the silver bullet. We want the quick fix. We want the simple solution. So I go out and hire this person because they're the expert and they can't change it alone, right? You're right on. Like,
yes.
You can't hire. And Jamie and I were talking about something like this offline, and we're talking about this person that can come in and has all the pedigree behind them. And ultimately, the approach they're going to try and do is create a culture that's a mirror image of them rather than building within the culture and empowering others to produce the outcome. That's the results-driven product. That's the byproduct of setting up the right culture.
Frank says, leaders effectively communicate the vision, and the vision is never ending. All right. If I'm a strong believer in, you need to tell the story of why you're in business, what drives you, and where you're looking to get to, and what each person represents in that dream, right? They need to know what their part is, how they benefit, how their team members benefit from their interactions, vice versa, how it benefits the entire team, because I want them to do it for them. I don't need them to do it for me, because if they're doing it for me, guess what? They're just performing a function. But when they do it for them, now you have everybody towing the rope in the same direction. That's when you achieve the rhythm that you're talking about.
Yes. There has to be clarity and specificity, right? That's the missing link in many businesses. The clarity and specificity lacks because the primary objective is outcome driven. The primary objective is make more net profit, drive my net profit up. You're not performing to the net profit number. And the reality is when you are focused only on the byproduct, everything else in between suffers.
Right.
We've talked about that for every opportunity that I get. And I think when you're talking about human development, the development of people, that's what generates business, not process, not systems. People do.
Yeah. And you know what? A customer coming in, they can smell that a mile away. It takes them a couple of minutes to figure this out. Wayne Bridger says, as a distance runner, I spent months in preparation. Then in the race, I have to get into my rhythm to ensure I can adapt, then finish strong. You know, I love the metaphors because a lot of it is the same, right?
It is, yeah.
It's a mental state. David Rozek, in the quiet between your words, others hear their destiny. You are not just a leader, you are a whisperer of forgotten power.
Interesting. I'm not sure I love the phrase forgotten power but I understand the deeper meaning, which is the power is in people, the power is in empowering them to achieve their destiny. I think it is what David's saying, and I do align with that. The more you empower others, the more you give them you allow them to use their own genius to solve problems, hence the Socratic discussion we had a little while ago. The more you empower them, the more they access that mental file cabinet, they can find the solution without you having to dictate the outcome. And in many cases, when you are sharing vision, when you're sharing values, when you're talking about purpose, it's what inspires people. And if you hire around that culture, if you hire a culture person, that's harder to do, but much more longer in its sustainability. You don't have that burnout.
Right. David Rosick says he loves Jamie. And Jamie says, amen. Explain the why before we expect anyone to understand the how. The why generally helps you with the how. And Michael Larkin, before I can truly call someone a client or partner, we run through the brand map with them knowing their mission, vision, values, and more importantly, their staff and me, so we all row in the same direction. Without it, the boat will go round and round without a rudder.
Yeah, well said, Michael. Love that.
I see that a lot, and I've seen it over the years. Jamie Alexander, people first, process always, profits follow. It's a pretty simple formula. Employee satisfaction equals customer satisfaction. It's a trickle-down effect.
We talk about that like that is a premise that everyone uses to drive their business. It's just unfortunately not the case. And until you understand what culture, the connection to culture is, it's not the sign on the wall, right? It's the underlying environment that is created. That's culture is driving your business. And whether you realize it or not, culture is what drives everything. That is the producer of your bottom line profitability. In fact, a better run culture, a more aligned culture is 5x the earnings of a traditional business environment. That's factual. That's science. Culture is heavy. It's very heavy, but it's so valuable in the context.
And Jamie says, when we believe we can, we know we will. Hey, Marshall Sheldon, how you doing? Have not seen you in a while. Says, missed the first half. Good to everyone. Or it's good evening to everyone. Hey, welcome, Marshall.
Welcome.
So, but culture in a cutthroat environment, that's a hard thing, right? Because in essence, you know, we're businesses within the business, all competing against each other. So how do you help them to all see themselves not as competitors, but as team members to help each other?
Culture in the long game is what makes the short game winnable. I'll say it again. Culture is the long game that makes the short game winnable. So in high pressure environments, they often default to short-term metrics. Like how do I get there quick? In toxic environments, leaders either they're going to reinforce the atmosphere or they're going to rewire it. That's why I talk about the hardwired system, right? When you hardwire EQ, when you hardwire the skills necessary for people to adapt and use their own genius, you create that system or that rhythm where people can be part of the solution. Hard toxic systems, they don't reinforce it. They rewire it in the wrong way, right? They take the approach that if Paul can't do it, next man up, next man up, next man up. And all of a sudden you have turnover in the double-digit percentage range. And we wonder why, because we don't hire for culture, because most don't understand the impact of that. I think the only way to build sustainable performance as an engine is to embed clarity, cohesiveness, and care, just genuine care into the operational core. Not as a luxury, right? We talk about this all the time. Culture is not it's not a luxury, it's an infrastructure. So if your culture only shows up in calm seas, right? Because you just talked about the general. If your culture only shows up in calm seas, it's not a culture, it's a convenience.
Right. Just going through the motions. It's just it's just running on its own.
And when it gets hard, when it becomes challenging, when it becomes stressful, is when people are chasing the wrong elements. It's when they're trying to chase the byproduct instead of being aligned, as I can't remember who said it, but aligned in that brand value, aligned in their why, aligned in their missions and their values and their purpose. Otherwise, it's just, you know what? I'm going to do the bare minimum to come to work every day and do the bare minimum and go home. And listen, in today's culture, 4 generations, you have 4 different styles of learning. You have 4 different methods to communicate. You have 4 different ways to get each generation involved in your business. And they don't all involve the same way.
Right.
That's vital.
And in a cutthroat environment, you can build that team culture by celebrating the wins, right? Share the wins. Hey, this is what Sally did. This is how Sally overcame this particular problem. Hey, look what Bob did, right? Bob was facing this, this, and that, and this is how he overcame it, okay? Celebrate that, because that creates a psychological safety net. Right? When you help
psychological safety is a science, and it's an organizational tenet of organizational strategy. But let's think about this even deeper than the reward recognition behavior. What you're really trying to do is the way that you build on that is learn how to have a strong, positive, reinforcing one-on-one with regularity. How many leaders have those environments where they're creating a structure around those one-on-ones? And the more clarity, the more sense of connection to the values of the organization, the more that individual has an opportunity to apply their best behaviors, apply their knowledge to achieve that goal. So yes, it's important to shout out the victories, to acknowledge the great things others have done. It's equally important to have those individual conversations about the opportunities, because the more you add clarity, the more you add specificity, the more that person can say, I align with these values. This is why I'm here. Or I am not aligned on these values, and therefore I deserve an opportunity to go somewhere else and contribute to that organization because you don't align with my values. That's okay. But you'd rather know by having those strong one-on-ones, those very connected one-on-ones. That's where real value happens.
What's interesting is that there are some leaders that do that spend the time regularly to have the one-on-ones. But some of the things that really stir me inside is when a general manager or an owner looks me in the eye and says, I could do a better job at that. That self-realization that not everybody possesses. When I hear those words, I could do a better job at that. That's like hitting lotto, right? Without collecting the money, because that type of feeling is like, wow, you just finally reached somebody that they acknowledge. Because self-awareness, look, let's be honest, in automotive and maybe some other industries too, I don't know all of them, but in automotive, self-awareness is not generally one of our strong points. So when people say that, make those statements like, wow, we're making some real progress here. Let's see, got a couple of comments. Jamie Alexander, you create a platform where everyone wants to level up. It's not perfection or short-term metrics. It's practicing and participating every day. A high producer doesn't always mean they are a team contributor. That is very, very true, because
Well
there are
said.
some people that they produce hard, okay, but they don't want to. They don't want to mentor or work with the other people, right? And then you have the other side of that, Mr. Marshall Sheldon, who works hard. This guy gets every certificate to level up and beyond anybody other than maybe David Rozek, okay? I mean, this guy lives a total Kaizen lifestyle, and he's always looking to then bring those other people up. So good point there, Jamie. David says culture plus long game equals winning. Environment is my favorite math in business. Love that. And Wayne says, we want teamwork, but we pay on commission. This system is diametrically opposed. No kidding. But here's the thing with automotive, though. At the end of the day, we get paid on production, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't care what you call it. Oh, our people are salaried. Well, guess what? If they don't produce a certain amount, they're not going to be collecting that salary for very long. Usually 60 to 90 days. I mean, it's sad to say, but it's true. We don't think about long term. We think about today, tomorrow, and oh shit, it's 5 days till the end of the month. Right? That's what we think.
Yeah, this is a deeper conversation, probably for people that are way smarter than me. What I can tell you is that there's a lot of research on the science behind competitive pay, and for top performers who are naturally attributed to their work ethics, it can be very productive. And for others who are working hard to get to that skill level, i.e. maybe a technician, it can actually be detrimental. So that science is real. There's a professor out of UCLA, you can probably look it up, but the research is pretty astounding on that topic. But that's probably from people that are way smarter than I am.
And me too. I'll jump on that train with you. Roger Gutierrez, alignment is key. Everyone has to be pushing in the same direction, and they all want to do it differently. You ever see that in the store?
Yeah, maybe once or twice. Yeah, everyone's got their own way of doing it. And I think that comes with the nature of the beast, because you're bringing people in from different environments. Yeah. And the counter effect to that is my point about culture and environment and alignment. When you hire for culture, then they understand your vision, they understand your purpose, they understand your mission. Then they can do the things that they do really well within the scope of that when you hire for the right people. You know, think about it this way. A great point might be technician turnover. How often do we have a conversation with a technician? Let me go deeper. Let me take a different approach. Our managers, our leaders, are they trained on how to communicate with a neurodivergent employee? Particularly, I'll use the example of a technician who might be ADD. The things that you are working towards as a leader, that the approach that you're taking with, say, a Gen Xer is going to be vastly different than a younger generation who has ADD. They're not going to absorb that, but we don't have the skills and we are not taught that environment. Then how do we know? We're just it's a vicious, repetitive cycle of turnover, low morale, because that person that has ADD can't assimilate to the behaviors you want to create. So it's a vicious cycle where you don't form the foundation, you don't give the skills and the ability to connect with that person, to align, so that person is doing the opposite of what your goals are. So that's really important in the reference to technicians and turnover.
Oh, guess who's visiting?
I heard the cat.
It's Oreo. See, he's been getting into fights lately, and he's been staying out late. So we grab him now before he goes roaming, because the other night he kept me up till 3 a.m.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, was not good. Hey,
So I saw a comment from Marshall about service manager turnover. Why do you think that is? It's evident that we were
No,
just
that's technician
talking
turn.
about it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed the first one. He says technician turnover industry-wide is between 30 and 48%. And service manager turnover has been hovering around 50% for a couple of years.
Why do you think that is? We keep bringing people to a different environment and expecting them to bring their culture with them. And in many cases, a really good leader will bring a new culture. They'll connect. I think John does this really well with his teams. He connects them to a value culture and he changes it from within. The challenge is that if you don't have the right players on the seat, on the bus, the right person in the right seat at the right time, as I can't think of the author off the top of my head said, the reality is that you have to have the right people. And then you have to change the culture from predominantly high toxic environment to a collaborative approach. And all of a sudden, great things happen. Turnover is happening because we're not giving leaders these different skill sets. We're not investing in them. We'll send them to an OE sponsored course on how to run a Ford service facility. We'll have an expert come in, much like yourself, to align the process, but we don't give them the educational background. We don't give them learning and development that's foundational to creating a system of rhythm in leadership. That's why a lot of that happens, at least in my humble opinion.
They keep making the same mistakes over and over. They don't know what they don't know. As a result, they keep going through people and they seem to sit there wondering, why are we getting all these bad people when in fact the problem may be closer to home than they want to admit. Mike Vogel says, if dealership owners and GMs really want to create an environment of both employee retention and customer retention, they have to walk the walk and stop chasing the numbers first. Yeah, that's what we talk about, you know. It's a whole different mindset. It's a whole different way of looking at your business. Moraine Bridges says, Mike Vogel, amen, brother. And David likes my cat, says a cute kitty. Jamie Alexander, as leaders, we should always give a platform that allows for constructive feedback and pushback. Listen to concerns and acknowledge them, then ask for the opportunity to show a different way. This industry becomes too dismissive many times. Who was it? What was it that I saw something recently? I think it might have been in Automotive News or on LinkedIn about, was it Toyota? Yes, it was an article about a plant that closed. They couldn't get their shit together, and Toyota came in and they implemented most of the suggestions that the employees made. They don't talk about, they actually take action and do. So great point.
Stop the line, right? That's the Toyota way. They stop the line. Any person in the line can stop it if they see a lapse in quality. And when you forget the team members that are actually using the systems day in and day out, when you forget those people, they're going to continue to do it their way. That is not aligned with your values. So you have this fork in the road, right? You have these gaps. I call it a performance gap because it's a disconnect between your values and the process. It's a disconnect between the person and the organization. And it's not that they're bad people. It's just they don't quite understand that, right? And so they're trying to jump that bridge or build that bridge from one process to another. If, I oftentimes I'll get in a conversation with a leader at a dealership, and I'll ask, how often have you gone to your person in the service drive, that perhaps it's the service drive manager or the porter, and is this what we do? We say we know what we do, but is this really what we do? And then backtrack all the way back. Honda did that years and years ago with process mapping and literally made us process map everything out. Today, that's gone to the wayside because we just plug and place 50% turnover for a service manager.
That's 50%. Crazy.
That's insane. We're chasing just the bottom line. We're chasing the byproduct. And when you get there, and I wish we could get in the right room with the right people to convince them that the way to do this the right way is to educate the leader you have, invest in the person that you have, and they'll become better and better at their skill and connect that vision and value goal. That's so important in this process. And that's why big business that actually understands culture, 5x earnings. Think about that just for a minute.
Yeah.
Scientifically proven to be true. Gallup, McKinsey, all the research shows when you have the right culture, you have the right connection and the right values to your team, 5x earnings.
You know what? The interesting thing is I've done some workshops, hiring and retention. Okay, and I coach on it. And the interesting thing is that a lot of leaders don't fully grasp what the cost of the turnover is, right? If you can put a number on what the turnover is in your store, they might look at things just a little bit differently because it's extremely, extremely costly. Beyond the first time you go through the numbers with somebody and they look at you like, holy shit, I had no idea it was that much.
Here's a question for leaders in particularly the automotive environment. When was the last time you had an engagement score? Meaning you actually used the science to understand the level of engagement at your dealership. From everyone, from the porter to the detailer to every person on the team, and then understood the context using science based on 5 critical metrics. Yeah. And the key is, if you really want to understand what it does, why it's important, you have to assess, because you may not have an issue. You may not have high turnover. Here's the thing that I have learned over the years. The organizations that don't have high turnover, that are really invested in their people, that spend money on learning and development, they're the ones who keep spending and they keep building culture, and they have 5x the earnings, and they're happy. The competitor is living in the dark ages. They're content with that, right? That's good, because those leaders keep investing and they keep understanding the dynamics of what human development is all about.
But you know, the sad part too is, just as those people are great because they want the other people to stay in the dark ages, there are some people committed to the dark ages that just will look you in the eye and flat out say, I don't care.
Yeah, of course. And that's okay too. You know, I think about it this way. In reality, those are not the partners I want, right? I want the partner who is invested in and sees value in investing in their team members, who sees value in changing their approach to client attrition, who sees a different way of approaching their business from a strategic point of view, using our services to provide a solution for them. So those are the partners I want. I don't want the person that says, hey, I could give a rat's ass. I really don't care about the individual. All I care about is keep providing bottom line profit. Okay, that's good. There's a place for that. I'm just not the person that's going to fit that place.
Yeah, no, and never be afraid to say no.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to have every client. You just don't. Marshall says you have to have a senior management that understands what you're going to need to do to turn the boat that has a broken rudder. How many of them don't even know that the rudder's broken?
Yeah, because they're not having this strategic conversation. They're very tactical in their approach. And ultimately they're saying, well, I don't care. You're the expert. You fix it. And then the moment you need something to fix it, they put up the dam, right? They put up the barricade, because they don't quite understand the connection from the human, the element of the individual. So I would say to those individuals that are stuck in that situation, there's other ways around. Join these calls, get on meetings that will contribute to you, and learn things that actually help you bypass those roadblocks, that dam, because there are methods and there are tools available to help you shift that.
Yeah, no, I agree. Let's get to a couple of comments. The night is burning quickly. It's like a candle that starts burning faster at the end. So Mike Larkin, hey Paul, what's the red background? I thought for sure you would go with the funky green paint you've been working with the past week. Sorry, back to the show. No, I like Joe's background, so I got a version of Joe's background. And Mike Vogel says, when you are focused on KPIs and net time is sand running through the glass, I know of a manager that there are bets on whether they make it in 90 days. The fabled 90-day wonder, right? It is insane. You need to nurture and develop the goal and breathe what you put down as mission statements. I have not seen KPI and net only on a mission statement yet. No, he's 100%. So service managers turnover is high because they are not properly coached and trained first. Just because they are great technicians or service advisors does not mean they can just move into that position without proper training. It is the same thing with sales managers, GSMs, right? Just because the top salesperson does not mean they possess the skills to lead a team, because often they don't. And Mike says, Paul, that was the Fremont, California GM plant that was converted to Toyota while using the same GM staff, but Toyota's production system. That's what I read. Yeah. It blew me away, right? Blew me away. My wife likes this saying, it's not the arrow, it's the Indian.
I like
I don't know if that's politically correct or not, but we're in automotive, so almost anything goes. And I think that's a pretty damn accurate statement, right? Two people can look at the situation completely differently, and where one was going to close the plant, the other one took over, and it thrived. The only difference is, and there's an old Italian saying, the fish stinks from the head. You have to empower the people. Somebody else said in this thread also. And KPIs are great for providing insight, but are a past result. Oh my God, we got some mic drop moments here. No pun on the mic. You have to unearth the past to fix broken. If you do not address the past, you do not move forward. My team does this way. My teams do it this way is enough. Now, oh, you know what? I think that's not Mike Vogel. That's somebody else. Hold on a second here.
Yeah, I think the point they're trying to make is that the KPI is where you were before. It lets you know where you have to work. How do you get the past fixed if you don't know where it's broken? So KPIs are important. There is a place. I don't think anyone's suggesting there's no place for KPI, because there is.
Benchmark.
There's leading indicators and lagging indicators. There's certain KPIs that it's a lagging indicator. And the idea of a lagging indicator that tells you what the process failures are or where that disconnect is. Leading indicators show you where you're headed. Like, what is it going to look like by the time you arrive?
Now, that last LinkedIn user was Alex Ruffini.
Great to see you, Alex.
Welcome to the show, Alex. Yeah, the platform sometimes doesn't tell us who it is. That's why I have the phone going at the same time. Let's see here. Marshall Sheldon, imagine if a manager's bonus structures were based on retention and internal employee service. Oh my God. That would be the best, in my opinion. Right? What do you think?
Well, I love the context. And if you think about retention, you have to think about retention not only from your customers, but from your employees, and then think about it from what are you trying to achieve. So if retention means I get all of my clients back over the past 5 years, all of my UIO back, you have to do it strategically. It's not magic.
Right. Not quick fix.
And you have to do it with a value proposition. So one of the topics we had on another discussion group was around pricing strategies for older vehicles. We aren't going to go there.
Oh, tonight. I love that one.
But if you think about that, if you're going to charge, say, a California rate might be $280 an hour, and you're independent, your competitor is going to charge 110 or 150 to care for a 2012 or 2008, but it's your product, you sold it, they're in your market, then you might want to think about how I restructure my strategy around retention. But it has to be tactical. You have to approach it in a meaningful way. And what we do, this is a point for a little bit of a commercial here, but at Traver Connect, what we do is we strategically approach that retention strategy, because we have a strategy for service. We have a retention growth product that's designed, and this is not really a commercial, but it's anchored to the point. It's designed to build retention.
Yeah, no, look, John Traver has put together great companies, and this one being no exception. I'm a big fan of John's and Bob's. So yeah, there's not a commercial. Sure. You're stating a fact is what you're doing. And then we have, and we're getting towards the end here, Scott C says, how do you find the most value? You search for that which is most undervalued.
Bravo. Well said.
Yeah. And Alex Raffini says, Marshall Sheldon, back in the day, Western Auto had that as part of the structure. And then last comment before we close it out, because we went over a minute over. Man, 60 minutes seems like a long time, but it's really not, because we didn't even get to half the stuff we wanted to get to. So I'm seeing a sequel here, Mike.
I'm all in.
Joe.
It's all good. I'm all in. You can call me whatever. I'm in.
Just don't call. You can call me whatever. Just don't call me late for dinner. And Wayne says, we'll finish out with this. We currently have a tech that has worked for us 39 years, 2 at 36, 1 at 35, 1 at 25, and 5 between 10 and 15 years. We invest in our people. I love this guy.
That's the key right there. Invest in your people.
And he's always looking for ways to better work with their people. I put a post out the other day, and he says, you know what? Thanks for sharing this. We're having a meeting. This is going to be part of this meeting. He gets bits and pieces from people that bring to the table things that will benefit his team, and they share it and they build on it. Very much like that Toyota plant, I would say. So, wow, man, this has been an awesome show. I want to thank you for being with us, Joe.
Thank you.
I want to thank the audience. We were very great participation this evening. And to those watching it on the replay, thank you. If you see value in what we discussed here, feel free to share it with your team. And thanks for watching. Have a safe and successful next week, and we'll see you next week on Sunday Night Live. Stay on after we go off air, Joe.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.